This is Mike Tatarsky, host of the Vietnam Weekly podcast, coming to you from Ho Chi Minh City. In recent months, I've noticed increasing amounts of waste around town, and I don't just mean your average plastic bottles or food containers. I'm talking about piles of furniture, construction material, and other rubbish dumped on the side of the road, often in busy areas. This waste generally gets removed after a couple of days, though where it goes is generally beyond me. But this wasn't a regular occurrence in years past, and a few newsletter readers have shared similar observations. In any case, it's abundantly clear that Vietnam has a waste problem, something that is acknowledged in domestic media. I've seen articles on Ho Chi Minh City's garbage-filled canals after heavy rain, a mountain of untreated waste on Con Dao, trash-strewn beaches, and ongoing pollution from landfills around Hanoi. In March, a government official said that Vietnam is among the 20 largest producers of waste in the world, generating roughly 60,000 tons of garbage daily. Hanoi and Ho Chi Minh City are responsible for nearly a third of that total, while just 20% of all landfills in the country meet national sanitary requirements, according to the Ministry of Natural Resources and Environment. Addressing waste once it has already been created is a daunting, expensive challenge. So what can be done to reduce waste in the first place? There are many approaches, and one in its early stages here is the circular economy, defined by the European Union as, quote, a model of production and consumption which involves sharing, leasing, reusing, repairing, refurbishing, and recycling existing materials and products as long as possible, end quote. Today's guest is Kim Lay, founder and CEO of CL2B, short for Closed Loop to Balance, a consulting boutique that facilitates decision-making across sectors and stakeholders to accelerate the circular economy transition in Southeast Asia. We discussed what circular economy means in the Vietnam context, how the informal economy already embraces circular principles like reuse and repair, in contrast to developed markets, the need to understand the different circularity contexts between the global north and global south, the opportunities of recycling in both the pre-consumer and post-consumer spaces, the structure of recycling in Vietnam, the country's role in the global circular economy as an apparel production hub, and hopes for the near future of the circular economy here. As always, if you have any comments, feedback, or guest ideas, get in touch at matatarsky@gmail.com. Now let's get to my conversation with Kim. Kim, thanks so much for coming on the podcast.
Well, thank you for having me.
Of course. So starting off, what is CL2B and what is your mission with that?
I know. Thank you for the question because a lot of people, don't know what CL2B means. So CL2B stands for Closed Loop to Balance, and we're on the mission to redesign the way we live within a system towards a circular economy. What we do is we collaborate with private sector. We work with private sector as well, public sector entity to redefine our economic system. And that we believe that we are preparing for our future, not preparing for the past. Our mission is twofold: to create a balanced ecosystem and promote equality. And circular economy principles serve as our guiding framework to achieve these goals.
And so building on that, you mentioned circular economy and circularity, which are phrases I see a lot. I'm sure some listeners see those a lot. What do those mean to you, and especially within the Vietnam context?
I think circular economy there is over 100 definitions about circular economy right now. And honestly, I was really thinking of put a conversation of circular economy 101. Just because everyone have different definition.
Yeah.
But for me, if we just follow, circular economy principle is basically toward regenerative economy. So all action from operation, business model, and system redesign toward reserve natural resources.
Mm-hmm.
So if all action and operation business model all least intention to delivery, the product, the services in our economic system in a way that toward using less natural resources or toward reserving it, I would call it circular economy.
Okay.
And then your second part is about like how is Vietnam, how circular in Vietnam context, right?
Yeah.
I think it's a very interesting question, and currently I'm still working towards it in terms of like Vietnam or global South country, let's say, and the Vietnam. I believe that's the circular economy principle already living in different practice in different economies development stages, right? So like for under poverty and for developing economy as well, we already see that like we're trying to save a lot of material and natural resources. It's just because of the economic or the wealth it not allow us to waste. However, when it comes into developed phase or where we economic prosperity is already achieved, and then we tend to towards the convenience rather than the sufficient economy. So it creates a lot of waste. So that's why, like working in Vietnam, working in developing an emerging economy and a very complex context and a big gap of wealth. So it creates quite a lot of contrast in terms of circular economy practice. I think if as my experience, currently Vietnam or global South country, I do not aware of any country from global South have measuring or like have access to the circular economy within the country. However, it would be very interesting for Vietnam. For example, we see the challenge in global North country where the repair system or reuse system having challenge to taking off. We see that in Vietnam, or you as well, living in Vietnam, you can see that a lot of small shop for repair the mobile phone from electrical device, and as well as the reuse system is really being, like really, really efficient with the informal economy. So the reuse and the refurbish is actually working among the informal economy by small business holder very well. Why is this not happening, or like it having challenge in developed economy where the system of the distribution and refurbish it need it being held by large business. But as well, I think that it's actually going to challenge Vietnam economy very quickly, because we can see that Vietnam economic is now developing so quickly, where the waste challenges is coming along.
Yeah, that's an interesting perspective. I hadn't really thought of the kind of prevalence of fixing things here. I mean, I know I think it's in District 10, there's a whole street, like an electronics market, where it's just secondhand, phones, tablets, all kinds of things for sale. A lot of it's been, fixed and refurbished to some extent. Whereas I know I'm from the US, for example, if something stops working, you just throw it out and don't really know where it goes from there, I suppose.
Yeah, but I think like I want to add a note on that, so because circular economy, when we measuring it, is very depend on the product and how the infrastructure and the entrepreneurship of the economy in the country of the host country look like as well. So taking one example of electrical device in Vietnam and how the market is rely on one thing we can see that is a lot of rely on informal sector. We cannot measure like the efficiency, where is the challenge. We have ton of challenge there in terms of identify the capability and the social and environmental impact at the informal sector as well. But as well, it depends on the material flow and product flow. So that's why it's very interesting to look into, and it's difficult to compare. It's difficult to compare how is this in Vietnam and how is this in, global North and US, or like in global North countries. It's because of the characteristic of the economic is different.
Sure.
However, we are questioning, we are discussing with different development agency and different organization in terms of how we can launch the assessment of circular economy in Global South. I think it's going to be very interesting to have a comparison between like how actually maybe some aspect going to be surprisingly that in circular economy in Global South country of some product point going to be more sufficient or already achieved.
Interesting. And this leads well into my next question, which so you've mentioned how in the Global North there's I guess in some countries at least, a circular economy is maybe a bit more advanced than in the Global South. I mean, in some developed countries, you're even having conversations about degrowth or kind of, disconnecting personal livelihood with economic growth. Whereas, of course, in countries like Vietnam and the rest of Southeast Asia, growth very much remains the focal point. So are circularity and degrowth kind of only really for the Global North, or I'm not arguing for degrowth for Vietnam, just to be clear, but, can Vietnam adopt circular economy concepts quickly, do you think?
It's a really good question, and then a tricky question as well. I think I firmly believe that themes like circularity and degrowth are not, exclusive to Global North. Rather, they should approach with a keen awareness of economic development state within a region or a country, right? This is I already mentioned before. And I think it's imperative for country in the Global South to take ownership of these terms and tailor them to fit the unique political, economic, and geographical context. I think, as said, like it's still Global North country has been really playing a big role in innovation, standardized different terms towards sustainable development. But then it requires the Global South country like Vietnam to understand our position in global political economic landscape and then strategically navigate towards security and equality of economic, environment, and social as well. Because for me, a circular economy is a tool to reach the security, social security, and natural resource security for the future, right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Yeah, so the goals and targets of circular economy initiatives in Global North is different from those from Global South or developing country economy. I think as well, we need to recognize that like the world is no longer evolving around Global North problem and standard alone. That and the Global South activists or like me or like CL2B need to aware of that and develop an independent thinking in order to saying, okay, this is a lesson already learned from Global North in terms of what is circular economy and degrowth. However, within the challenge and within what lesson learned from Global North country and what the Global South challenges is based on the infrastructure, the economic, the people behavior. Rarely we see that it very, very obvious is that we see that right now we already have different stage of development of information and technology. Developing country as well position ourselves different with different infrastructure, different knowledge, different awareness of consumer behavior and labor skill. We have AI, we have big data. So really understanding the value of one country, our position to define how circular economy going to bring Vietnam towards a better position, but then we really have to reach the I believe it's a sufficient way of consume and product and security for the people in Vietnam. That's the goals.
Mm-hmm.
I talk about the goals. I haven't talked about like where Vietnam at, right? And such. It's complex, but
Yeah.
I think Vietnam is catching up. I think Vietnam government has been very open-minded, really put a lot of effort in terms of policy making and how this can, and more effort to put, we have seen different regulation and have been putting in circular economy, like circular economy action plan, and then as well strategic development and different regulations specific in terms of regulating and trying to reduce the impact of several fast consuming goods, the post-consumer waste of fast consuming goods, which is very quick within, if we compare to other countries within the region, and very, determinant. So it's a good sign. However, implementation, and there is lacking a lot of data in terms of consumer behavior and as well natural resource reserve and understanding the circular economy within specific value chain and supply chain in order to draw an actionable action plan.
And you mentioned, post-consumer goods. When it comes to circular economy, there's kind of two halves. There's the pre-consumer, so I guess manufacturing and supply chains, those sort of things, and then post-consumer. Where's the bigger opportunity for environmental impact when it comes to recycling on the pre-consumer and post-consumer ends of the spectrum?
Are you asking in the point about the business or an investor in this, or are you asking me? I often call myself a system redesigner towards circular economy. So, what position you're asking me?
Good question. I suppose from your position as a system redesigner, as you say.
So, I think that the environmental impact of pre-consumer versus post-consumer recycling depend greatly on the recycling infrastructure in place, right? Mm-hmm. And for an economy or for a system to work, we need to considering both. The recyclable material stream present unique opportunity and as well challenge. Pre-consumer recycling offer advantage of providing clean and uniform feedstock for recycling process, facilitating efficient material recovery at scale, because we have to understand economic at scale or production at scale is providing the competitive pricing, but as well providing the efficiency of energy and water consumption. So, for example, a recycling facility, it needs to achieve a certain capacity in order to achieve its efficiency in terms of environmental management, economic, and social, right? And then the the pre-consumer recyclable material feedstock going to allow that to happen because its volume is clean and clear and big volume. So post-consumer recycling actually focus on material discarded by consumer after use, such as, for example, packaging, household items, and so on. So post-consumer recycling might not always provide as ideally feedstock, but it play a crucial role in reducing burden on municipal waste management system. Mm-hmm. So it contributing different environmental impact here and larger scale in terms of macro challenges. So by diverting material from landfill and incineration, post-consumer recycling had mitigated the environmental impact from waste disposal, including greenhouse gas emissions, soil and water contamination, and as well ecological, challenges. So the mixed stream of pre and post recycling feedstock is necessary and will optimize the recycling economy in a way, and as well supporting or actually minimize the environmental impact for the municipal waste stream.
And sticking with recycling, which I know at least at the household level here in Vietnam, I think is pretty informal. If I go out and put an empty cardboard box outside my house, a woman on a bicycle comes along and takes it almost immediately. Same for glass and things like that. But who is driving recycling in Vietnam kind of on a larger scale? Is it brands and their climate goals, or is the Vietnamese government driving it to improve waste management, or both?
Actually, when we're talking about recycling economy, is the economy system worked by the motivation itself. So the motivation of recycling economy is access into cheap sort of material to meeting the demand of material within a product and an economic sector. Vietnam, let's say that like the recycling economy, as you said, is primarily driven by domestic demands, particularly for informal sector. The country had seen a significant increasing in recycling rate, driven by the need for cheaper material for domestic production and consumption. What I see in recent years, there has been growing trend toward incorporating recycled content in product to reducing carbon footprint and align with circular economy goals. This has been influenced by both global economic goals, because Vietnam is a production hub right now, and as well increasing investor interest. These have led to improvement in quality and supply chain management of recycled feedstock within the country. However, this effort honestly is still very at early stage. And as well, Vietnamese government is also beginning to play a role in driving recycling effort by identifying different approach, making investment, and establishing regulatory framework to improve the solid waste management infrastructure. However, it's crucial to recognize that upstream design, including product design to recyclability, will be a key to achieve material recovery target, and as well to provide a good and clean and low impact feedstock for the recycling economy in Vietnam.
And kind of moving into a specific industry sector. So, I see circularity or circular economy talked about a lot in fashion or, apparel manufacturing and sale. Vietnam, of course, is a huge country for apparel manufacturing. And of course, there's fast fashion stores here, Zara, Uniqlo, et cetera, that are quite popular. But there's not really a thriving or a barely even existing kind of like secondhand vintage clothing scene. For example, if you go to the US, or I was in Japan earlier in the year, and there's a lot of secondhand clothing shops, which I think is its own form of circular economy. Do you think something like that will ever develop in Vietnam?
Well, I think I think it's massive material and information right now in terms of secondary market and reuse stream and repair stream challenges in mostly developed and material by global north or developed market. Just because there is so little, we understand how the secondhand repair and reuse and secondhand in the global south or developing country. What I see is we love to conduct a research and to making a compare and seeing how it is as well. So secondhand market in Vietnam is already thriving through by both domestic demand and as well imported from a large market of secondhand goods from countries like Japan, US, and UK. So you're not gonna surprise finding secondhand store in Vietnam or thrift store in Vietnam, and all the products are actually imported from Japan, US, and UK. And consumer in Vietnam considering that sort of product actually higher quality and cheaper for them to have a good product, good quality compared to domestic, like supply. But it's currently unregulated, and this market encompasses a diverse range of products from fashion, electronics, and as well transportation vehicle. So unlike traditional fast fashion models seen in global north, Vietnam's secondhand clothing market is driven by small boutique local brand as well offer. So we as well, when talking about fashion market in Vietnam, we as well see different so the consumer not only have access into fast fashion brand like Global North, but then they have access equally like kind of same price because the product here are quite cheap, and the boutique brand is actually quite cheap as well. So if you can see a lot of boutique brand in Vietnam, let's say the market retail for fashion in Vietnam, then it actually is like Shein, but then the fast fashion Shein, the e-commerce.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the Chinese company. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a Chinese one where they do e-commerce. But in Vietnam, you're able to access to very small production of a small collection, quick production from local brand in Vietnam, and very competitive pricing as well. So consumer market, let's say, is a huge by small producer in a small market like that, which is in small brand like that, which is impacting, for example, the effort or the awareness and the work to actually define the impact of the post-consumer waste of fast fashion in Vietnam.
Okay.
Yeah. But as you mentioned that Vietnam is actually a production country, and would you like me to dive deeper on in terms of here we talk about supply chain of fashion, and the global supply chain of fashion is Vietnam play a big role, and it no longer belongs to one country responsible, but it's actually massive network.
Sure. Yeah, please go ahead.
So that is a picture. Previously, I mentioned about the picture of domestic market, which is, as I said, it's totally different to global north market, right, or developed country market. Vietnam fashion market is completely different. So that then Vietnam as a country play a big role in terms of the fashion and textile supply chain. Then Vietnam responsible for global fast fashion dilemma lie in its role of production hub, with many global brands sourcing product from Vietnam, and the country actually bear the direct responsibility for the environmental and social impact associated with the textile manufacturing, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think in the coming years, regulation like carbon border adjustment mechanism, CBAM, in EU may have significant implication for Vietnam production when we try to adjust the impact of product manufacturing in different countries rather than local, right? And as well, global pressure in terms of address environmental footprint of fashion product, then Vietnam must navigate the challenge to continue supporting, local and as well the textile manufacturing. The current work related to circular economy on that is not directly direct to post-consumer waste, textile waste challenge that EU country have, because every country right now trying to deal with post-consumer waste in their own country. And Vietnam as well do not allow to import, for example, allow import used clothing in the country to actually processing with it.
Right.
Yeah, so the effort right now is really lowering the impact of the manufacturing related to post-industrial waste rather than post-consumer waste. And Vietnam not actually involved on that conversation right now.
So moving towards, I guess, kind of one big final question. I know some listeners, if they're in Vietnam listening to this, are well aware of Vietnam's big waste management challenges. If I drive around the streets of Ho Chi Minh City and there's frankly a lot of just trash out, plastic waste, general waste, a lot of litter. Of course, we all know about the problems with beaches. Not all of that waste comes from Vietnam. So, of course, huge challenges, but big opportunities, I think. Where do you kind of hope to see the circular economy go here in the next few years?
Well, I hope, since I'm working intensively and with my college in circular economy in Vietnam and Southeast Asia, I hope it involves significantly. That's my hope. But of course, my vision is include, I think for the realistically, right? In the next 5 years, my visions include a mature data infrastructure. I actually have to realize that, like, if we do not have the good data and good assessment, all of the decision making right now towards circular economy is rather formal. It means fear of missing out because we do not know what is actually our action going to what actually impact and how much impact is it. So the stage of it is still very new since we do not have the data infrastructure to support our decision making and really identify what decision making and investment going to leading towards what impact factor here.
Okay.
So the improving the data infrastructure, environmental measurement is really crucial for defining clear strategy. And this is not only on private sector play a good part, but as well like the national data in terms of what natural resources need to be reserved, the flow information of not only one business, one sector, but then because one material can be used for many sectors and many business, and including informal market as well. So it need national data for different material flow. I as well aim for business to embrace circular economy principle, vital to their growth and resilient strategy. So I see that circular economy and sustainability is not only for branding or not only for sustainability in terms of environmental and social at all, but then as well for business growth. So reflect in terms of how the growth business strategy with circular economy for business is what I would like to see. In the next years, then I foresee Vietnam consumer demanding. So consumer in Vietnam going to take accountability as well in terms of their decision, in terms of buying which product, in which is going to be the big motivation for brand and for government to producing a more a better of fair market where the product pricing it not only reflect on the product use, but as well reflect its sustainability factor as the environmental friendly, its circularity, and as well its social aspect. So a market need to happen.
Yeah, I certainly hope to see all of that as well. It's kind of a challenging but exciting space. I suppose the only way to go is up. But Kim, thanks for taking some time out of your busy schedule to talk to me. I know this circular economy can maybe seem a bit vague to some people, but it's definitely an important issue moving forward, and I'm looking forward to hearing more about it. So Kim, thanks again for coming on the show.
Pleasure.
That's it for this week's episode of the Vietnam Weekly podcast. Connect with Vietnam Weekly on Threads, LinkedIn, or Instagram. Thank you so much for listening, and please rate or review the show on your preferred podcast platform. I'm taking a break from the show next week, so I'll see you in 2 weeks.